to 10 Questions, my friend.
Hey, Jimmy, the Don. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate that, brother.
Hey, absolutely, my friend. Really excited to talk to you. So we're going to jump straight into this thing. The first question is always the same, brother. It's what or who got you into comic books?
It's a long, not a long story, but my father. So my father and uncle were avid collectors in the 60s. And I was about 10 years old. And it was one of those family gatherings, and I had a dispute with one of my cousins. My father took me out of the house and took me to the local, at that time it was like soda shops. You would get like a malt and all of that stuff. Brought me in there and bought me a bunch of comic books. And I was hooked ever since. But I didn't really save and collect like I should have for quite a while,
Well, it's funny that you say that because, my uncle was the one who got me into it. He bought and sold a lot at flea markets. And if you've ever watched 10 Questions, I've told this story 1,000 times. But it was one of those deals where he bought and sold, and it was trading cards and comic books and, knives, really anything he could make a dollar on. Because he was a coal miner, and the coal miners would get laid off here and there. So he would be looking for something to do on the side. And he just kind of developed a thing for that. And I used to get to sit and read the books, like he would let me sit and read the books. Now, we didn't have like the soda shops or malt shops or things like that. For us, it was the supermarket. You had to go to the supermarket.
Right.
And they would have a magazine rack, and you'd have comic books there. Now, did your dad and uncle collect like your entire life? Did they always collect while you were growing up?
So I didn't. When my dad brought me into it, they had stopped collecting, or my dad had stopped collecting. But it's how I got my love for like Captain America, and they were big Sergeant Fury guys, and remember there were niche books back then. The war books were big back then, and they used to read the westerns, so it was like Two Gun Kid and Outlaw Kid and all of that stuff, and then the superhero stuff. But it's funny because you talk to them and they were like, "Oh, I used to have that book. I used to have that book." And
that's crazy.
It's one of those stories, But it's funny going on like 30 years down the line. Talking to my uncle, and he had saved a portion of his collection. He had a collection of Golden Age Green Lanterns that were in. He had the foresight to take books and put them in Ziploc bags because he was always very meticulous before they were poly bags and everything else and Mylars. He was putting them in Ziploc bags. So these books were pristine.
Wow, that's crazy. No, I mean that's it. Are you like the rest of us? Like you kind of got into it. You discovered Girl on Beer, Girl in and out, and then kind of came back in. When did you come back in? Like, how long have you been back in the hobby?
I've had right now. I've been back in this fold since like 2010.
Oh, okay.
Good deal. I've had phases. So as we say, you hit puberty, and then you find girls, and you find alcohol, and hanging out, and comics go wayside, and then I really discovered it again in the 90s when my youngest son was watching TV because he was watching the X-Men series and the Spider-Man series on Fox. And it was something I got to share with him.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's cool because to this day, he's my comic book guy. So most of the guys in the community will know him because he goes to all the cons with me. And we just hang out and do cons and do all the movies. We go movie premiere night. We're there. So
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's cool. So let's make this question too. Like, do you read books? Like, I know, you sell a lot of books, you do a lot of different things like that, but do you still read, or do you primarily collect and resell?
I don't resell that much. I move books to buy books is basically what I do. And I like King Con was the first time I've ever set up at a convention. That was last year. Since then, I've only done one other show. But I read, but not like I used to. I used to, just voracious. I was that guy that it was $80 a week at the local comic shop, just new books, just continuously.
That's pretty much who I am. Like I'm a big reader, like when I was talking to Jay from Pressful Defects, that was one of the things that he and I really had in common is I'm a big reader, a new comic book day reader. I like to go back and read the old stuff.
Yes.
And I collect some older stuff too, but I think we all at some point probably resell some books. something that doesn't really fit your collection anymore, or maybe you find a good deal on something and you can sell that and buy something you want. Is that kind of what you do?
Yeah, well, my thing is I was a set collector for a long time. So I finished the run of, like I said, books I shared with my dad. I finished my run of Captain America from 100 through to the current at one point. Did the same thing with the X-Men. I'm only missing issue 12. And then, yeah, up to 450. That'll stay with me forever. And then I'm working on my Amazing Spider-Man run now.
Amazing.
But, so great. I was reading sets. I would get into a story arc and I would just read, you know?
Oh yeah, no, that's really one of my favorite things about I just like to read, and I enjoy going back and reading because it's so different when you go back, the older books. Oh, yeah. It's written very differently, like it's very campy in ways. The art is one of the most impressive things to me, how they were doing those things back then. Today we think everything, with technology, a lot of digital and, a lot of that stuff, like how they did that back then is pretty impressive, really.
Have you ever seen when you go to a show or something, they sell original art, and they'll actually have pieces that are cut out and put onto the actual drawings that they do to get that overlay. And that's how they were setting up their overlays. It's actually pretty cool when you see stuff like that. But like you're talking about that, some of the worst story I read are early X-Men. It's just it's horrendous. It is horrendous. And you talk about reading again, though. I'm revisiting now. What I started reading again was Tomb of Dracula.
Ooh, that's cool.
That's been great.
What brought you to Tomb of Dracula? Like, what brought you
there? It was just stuff was popping again, and the horror culture was coming out again. And I remember reading it a long time ago, and I was telling my son, this is really good. So for Christmas, he got me an omnibus, which is pretty tough to find right now. So started reading that again. That's been fun.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, like I like to go back, and I'm kind of like that too. Like Moon Knight, right? The show's getting ready to come out.
Yeah.
So I went and grabbed an omnibus of that so I could kind of read, because I'd never really read a whole lot of Moon Knight before. Right. I'm more of a DC guy than I am Marvel.
Oh, okay.
So I went back and read that. When Hawkeye came out, I went and read the Matt Fraction run of Hawkeye. And I enjoy going back and doing that. I think that's a lot of fun to do.
Okay, so now I know it's your show asking the questions, but I got a question for you.
Yeah, fire away.
Barry Allen, Wally West.
I am a Barry Allen guy.
Same
here. The OG, but I love Wally.
Yeah.
I love Wally West. But Barry Allen is my Flash.
That's my Flash. Right.
Yeah, that's my Flash. So, and I know there's a generation where Wally West is their Flash.
Yep.
But Barry's mine. It's kind of like, Superman's my guy. Like, as far as growing up, we didn't have very many. Like, I grew up in rural Eastern Kentucky, and we legit had 3 channels. And I'm sure you remember when we were kids, like Saturday morning cartoons would come on.
Huge.
And Super Friends was the only thing I really got to watch. And so I became a DC fan, and I love Superman as much. I love the idea of Clark Kent as much as anything, because my father was very patriotic, kind of do the right thing. Superman always spoke to me. And Christopher Reeves is my Superman.
Oh, right,
like, there was a book that came out the other day. I think it was Action Comics. There was a variant, and it was like Superman flying around the earth. And I bought it immediately because it reminds me so much of Reeves and that Superman. So, yeah. And it is interesting. I love that question, though, because, like X-Men's not a big thing for me because that came a little after me. Same thing with like Ninja Turtles.
Right.
That kind of missed me. It was more He-Man, G.I. Joe, Thundercats,
Herculoids.
All that, Voltron.
Yeah.
Yeah, like all that stuff was kind of my generation. When you collect, like some of the things that you like to collect is, and we'll make this question 3, like some of the things that you like to collect, is it nostalgia based for you? Like I find myself right now buying action figures. Like I just finished buying the entire Wave 1 He-Man action figure run. And then I'm buying, like I bought the first appearance of He-Man in DC continuity. Like what drives your collecting?
Yeah. So when I first started, I was just buying up everything. And then you got to get a focus is the way we all talk about it. And I went back to what I loved more than anything else. The first thing I wanted to close out was I was getting high grade copies of the Bronze Age X-Men run. That whole Claremont's run is my favorite run of all time. You know, to me, he's the best.
He's the master. I agree.
Yeah, you know, that run he had there was phenomenal, and that's what I treasure. So I chased that, and then I started chasing the keys. You know, the bigger keys, the ones that you know when you were a kid and you'd walk by, and I had this conversation with some of my friends from New York Warriors. A $50 book was a lot of money for you at one time.
Oh yeah,
and you're like, wow, that was a key for you. But now you evolve and you move along, and that's why we say we fund the hobby with the hobby. And now you're buying $500 keys, and you're getting those books that you always treasured. So the book that I wanted the most, it means the most in my collection, is my X-Men 1. So I chased that book forever. And about 7 years ago, I bought it on the CGC forums from a reputable dealer there, and he allowed me to make time payments on it.
Oh, wow.
And it will never leave my collection because that is my baby. It's only a 2.5, but that book to me means everything because the X-Men to me was everything growing up, you know?
No, that's cool, man. No, there's some books like that out there for me. I was very fortunate, like I said, to be able to run around with my uncle. We used to go dig in barns. We used to go dig, like him and my dad were really close. It was my dad's brother. So, and he and my dad were really close. So he used to take us with him. Like we would go pick with him. I mean, I think in the wild, I believe it was, we found 4 AF-15s in the wild.
God.
And you can't do that now.
No.
You know, like you would never find those now, but we found all kinds of books like that. The AF-15 that I have was his. He, when he passed away, he left it to me or just gave it to me when he was sick. So I have that book and a bunch of others that sit in a safety deposit box that I will never get rid of because, well, they were his, number one, and we were just so tight. But yeah, no, for me, it's really nostalgia driven as much as anything. Because like you said, when I first got back into it, and I tell people, like, I need to do a video on what to do and not what to do, what not to do when you get back into collecting. Because I was buying freaking everything. I was buying cover A, B, C, D, E, F to all the way to Z. I was buying every tie-in to everything that came out. I was going back and buying just stupid books, that stupid bitch money is what I like to call it, just buying everything. And then like it's collector ADHD and you just got to kind of settle into a pocket. So now I've kind of settled into the 80s nostalgia, early 90s nostalgia for me.
Okay. All right. So you have that genre that you just stick to right there, and that's what you go after.
Yeah. Right now, I'm like trading cards. Hell, I collect everything. Like trading cards, even. I only collect Kentucky guys because when I say this a lot too, when you're born in Kentucky, as soon as you're born, they put the Big Blue Nation onesie on you, and you're a Kentucky basketball fan. Right. That's the deal. And so I still like to collect trading cards, but I only collect the Kentucky guys, and I collect rookie patch autos and things like that.
Yeah, like I was a collector of everything at one point. So I did my whole action figure phase for a while, and again, a lot of it was raising my son and growing up with him and collecting with him. The other thing, I'm a big Star Wars guy. So
I love Star Wars too.
So I collected Star Wars autographs before they became really big. So
that's cool.
I have an Empire Strikes Back 8x10 signed by the entire cast.
Wow.
The only person I need on there is Harrison Ford.
Oh wow, that's awesome. I remember
I was living at the time. I started it in the 90s.
That's awesome, man. Like I remember going to the theater and watching Empire. It was Star Wars came out in 1977, right? And I think I was 2 years old when that came out. It was Return of the Jedi.
Right.
Yeah, I think it was Return of the Jedi was the third one. Was the third one, and that's the one I think the first one it was Return of the Jedi that I watched in the movie theater for the first time.
Right.
And then went back and found those. And I love Star Wars too. And that's what I'm saying. Like everything's really nostalgic for me. I had all the Star Wars toys. Yeah. And I still have a lot of them. Like I've got the AT-AT Walker, the original AT-AT Walker Millennium Falcon that I'm trying to find like pieces for, original pieces for to kind of put them all back together. Did you keep a lot of that stuff from your childhood?
From that era. Yeah, I have a storage unit that literally is all books and toys. because
Wow.
I can't let it go. And that's what I'm trying to dwindle down now, because I just was buying everything. Like, you name it, I was reading it, and then I was going back and buying everything that I always wanted. So like, growing up, I was always a big fan of Marvel Team Up. So I went back and started filling in that run on Marvel Team Ups, because and it's funny because now you're seeing things like that, Marvel Team Up 65, which is the first Captain Britain. But back then that meant nothing,
Right.
it was just a book, but I had to have it because it was part of the run. How to read, when you're a voracious reader and this stuff, you just suck it all in.
No, you do. I said, and that's the thing too. Like I tell a lot of people my nephews, I have daughters. I guess I should tell people I'm sitting in a hotel room right now talking to ERod. I'm in Columbus. My daughter's has a dance competition here. And so they will watch the shows with me. Like they loved Hawkeye, like absolutely love that. But now I have two nephews that are big superhero fans, and they're just 8 and 5. But I bring them books. Like I get the Marvel Voices books, and not Voices. It's through IDW, I think, or it's one of those companies where it's like for kids, but they'll have like Origins, I think is what it's called. But anyway, I'll bring those to them. I said, now one thing, and I'll make this question for when it comes to your son, he's going to benefit from you knowing, don't throw this stuff away. Like hang on to this stuff, take care of it. Because I still have all those old Star Wars toys, and I've got pieces of things everywhere, right? And so what I've been doing is putting it together and then trying to figure out what I've got, what I don't have, and then kind of putting all that back together, and then going back and collecting the comic book run. Like I'm working on a Star Wars run right now, from the original. So like question, I guess we'll make this question 4. Like with your son, is he really into the hobby and just absolutely loves going with you?
He loves all of that stuff. He loves the culture, loves talking about it. He's another guy who's a reader. So his thing is, though, he does omnibuses. He just reads omnibuses and he goes through them. He actually educates me on stuff now. Like he's reading the original Fantastic Four run. He's going through the Fantastic Four run from the beginning all the way through right now. And he's getting into different writers, and he's like, hey, this is really good. When John Byrne, he went through John Byrne run in there, he's like, wow, you really need to reread that, because that was a lot of fun reading that stuff. So it's good. As far as like, he knows certain books and he knows titles, not to the degree that I know him, but he does. What I do is the books that I really want to save, I get them graded through CGC.
I got you. Okay.
For me, I want to put a price point on it. And if I feel that in the event that I go, pass along someday, it's easier to sell that way for them.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and there's a more defined value too. When you know exactly what you've got, the value is much more defined. Yep. All right, let's go into question 5, and I want to talk a little bit about, how I originally found out about you was through Very Gary's channel. And, he would always talk about, and the defects, but they would talk about you being their presser.
Right.
And so I wanted to ask, is that your full-time gig? Like, is that all you do is like comic book pressing and things like that?
So here's the story. It wasn't. Forever, I worked a regular job, and that was just my little side hustle, but I've recently retired. So when I retired, this has kind of become my thing now, I press more regularly, shall we say.
So, how did the pressing, how did that come about? I think all of us, because you're sending these books off to CGC, and there's the extra fee for the clean and press and things like that. Did it really just kind of start from that? Like you were cleaning and pressing your own books, and it evolved into what it is now?
Exactly what happened. So about, I want to say almost 6 years ago, I'm always part of the New York Warriors. I don't know if you're aware of them.
I am.
Big East Comics and those guys. So we're all friends. We met through the YouTube community, and we're all local guys from New York. So we met up at a local show and all became friends and started a show together. And, a lot of guys got their start on that show, so big shout out to those guys. And I used to send my books in through a third party guy, but I would also send in through CCS. And the wait times were too long. The prices were too long. And, I didn't think that the books were getting the care that they needed to get. And no knock on CGC or anything like that. Just what I didn't feel it was what I wanted. So what I did is I started doing research. And back then, it's a lot easier now to learn about pressing than when I started out. It was like a little cult, and nobody gave any information out. So I went in and I started doing research on paper conservation and learning how to make a humidity tank and things like that, just through little websites. And you would find little tidbits here and there. And then I met a guy and I started talking to him, and he told me what kind of a press he had purchased. So he had a Seal 160, which it's an industrial pressing machine that's used for like dry mount presses and stuff like that. I wound up finding one used cheap, and I bought one. So I started practicing on garbage books and figuring it all out. And then when I got halfway decent, I reached out to like my friends from the New York Warriors, and I was like, hey, give me a shitload of books that you don't want to practice on, and I'll get them back to you. And the books presented better. And I perfected my craft that way, little by little. It was all trial and error, though. I mean, I must have pressed books. No lie, I probably pressed books for about a year before I even thought about doing a good book.
Really? So
Yeah.
how many books would you say you just destroyed? Like just absolutely destroyed?
I've destroyed, like, okay, not this book here, because this is somebody's I'm going to press, but a book like this, a modern book, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially like the image books that are the glossy ink, if you introduce too much heat to this book for too long a period of time, it literally becomes a Frisbee.
No kidding.
It fuses. The paper will melt. The ink will melt into the paper, and it fuses. The thing is, I did it to one of my friend Manny NYC's books. Is left it in there too long, and the pages stuck together, and the color rubbed off one page onto another page. So we say it all the time. Anybody can press, and it's great to buy a machine and press, but you have to learn your times, your temperatures, your stacks. It's a little involved. And where you live and the humidity around you all plays factor. Where you're doing it. You're doing it in a basement, it's cooler down there. Humidity is going to be different down there than it's going to be upstairs in an attic or something like that.
So it's really that detailed as far as if you want to be really good at it, you've got to understand your environment. You've got to understand all those things.
Yeah, because sometimes you introduce humidity. If you introduce too much humidity into the book and your environment is different, the book's going to have to stay in the press a lot longer, because if it doesn't, it comes out with what they call a flare. Mm-hmm. And the book flares up because there's still water in that book and it has to come out, so then you have a half job.
Interesting. So is there a difference between, like, say, a golden age book? I'm sure there is. I mean, because the paper quality is different, but I mean, like, is there a difference in the way you have to press a golden age versus a silver versus a bronze versus a copper versus a modern?
Absolutely. And even like you get to a modern, like I was saying, a modern Marvel compared to a modern Image, compared to a modern Boom, are three different type of books. Mm-hmm. Because they all use different type of paper, different cardstock for the covers. So you have to be able to adapt to those books and know those books, and know how they react to humidity, how they react to heat, temperature. Pressure is the other thing. You'll see a lot of times when people start pressing, they put too much pressure on the book, and when they put too much pressure on the book, the staple indents. And that's a sure sign that the guy pressed the book too hard. And you'll see things like that. If you leave if you don't change out your silicone release paper and you're using it on that, they get like marks on them and everything like that, and you'll get what's called pebbling. Well, now CGC has recognized this. These are defects that at one point weren't recognized, and now they're taking points off for basically improperly pressing a book.
Wow. That's interesting. I knew there was, I can imagine, like, I would never press a book myself because I would tear it all to pieces. Like, that's just not who I am. I'm not that guy. I'm not that patient. And I would imagine it takes some patience to really figure out how to do it and do it well. And you've obviously developed a really good name in that, part of this community.
Right. Yeah. But again, I feel, and that's why my wait times are kind of long, because I'll go back and press a book 2-3 times. If it needs it, then we're going to try and get that book to the best possible. The way I try to do it and do everybody's books is, it's the way I would want my book done. So right. I'm going to take my time with it. and you're gonna see. And I'll give you a quick story, and it's funny. I'm at a local show with a bunch of the guys, and the dealer is selling a Edge of Spider-Verse 2. And he goes, book was pressed wrong, so I'll sell it to you. It's a 9.2. And what it is modern books now all have that digital code in it. There's a certain way to press that book because of the digital code.
Really?
So, yeah, because if you don't, that code presses through all the pages.
Oh, wow. I guess it does. Yeah. Okay.
Right. So that's what happened. So I had to go back and repress that book. It took me about a week. But just took my time with it. I like the challenge. Took my time with it, and I got it back to a 9.6.
Wow. Wow, that's crazy. So, and this is a very, very elementary question, but there are new collectors who watch 10 Questions, and we're kind of talking about the pressing. I want explain why it's important to have a book pressed,
well,
and clean for that matter.
Yeah, it comes down to economics, really. If you want to maximize a book, it's one of two reasons you press a book. The number one reason is value, and you want to get that book to the highest grade possible. In the event that you want to sell it, the book presents the best that it can. The other thing is sentimental reasons, and I have the first X-Men book I bought off a rack was X-Men 104. To this day, I have that in my collection, but that's been pressed and cleaned, and it's still well read. But to me, it means something, and I've had a lot of that. This book was my dad's book,
Right.
I just want it to be the best book. I don't care what the grade is, but I want it to look the best that it possibly can. But it basically all comes down to it. Now, the other thing that you got to realize, and that people don't realize, is guys need to learn how to grade properly. Because that's the difference between a 9.6 and a 9.2. If you don't know what is a pressable defect, what's not a pressable defect, I try and explain to people, like, you can have this book here, right? And the book has a spine split going down the side, but it has a whole bunch of defects to the front that I could press out.
Mm-hmm.
It is not going to go up any higher a grade than what it was if I fix these defects, because that spine split is something that's a permanent split that a book will only get a certain grade when it has that defect. So, I'm not going higher than a 4.0 on a book like that.
Right. So let's make this question 6. And this is something that I wondered, and it's kind of something you touched on. Like I have a book, and this book is not even really worth money, but it's the Firestorm #1. It's the first Nuclear Man book, and it is the book that got me into collecting.
Okay.
My uncle gave it to me. It's completely, it's ragged. I mean, it's a reader copy, it's a beater copy, and it's in the safety deposit box with all these other books.
Okay.
Because it's that important to me. It was the first book he ever gave me. It was the book that the colors, the orange and the yellow, and then just the story.
I know the cover.
It was just the one that really kind of brought me in. So I say all that to ask this question. Are there some books you shouldn't press? Like I could see, or not press, but press and get graded. Like I could see getting that Firestorm book pressed and graded because it's sentimental to me. And it encapsulates that book, and the value is to me. It is, there's no value in selling it really because it's in that bad of shape. Because hell, I would carry around my back pocket. I mean, it's just it's that kind of book. But is there? I don't know how I want to ask this. Like, is there a way? Like, are there certain books that shouldn't be graded? Like, even if they're like a Hammer book like that one, like that AM or
the way I do it, and the way I tell people is, unless it means something to you, right? And it's for sentimental purposes, you should have a price point in your head of what you think the book is going to be worth. So do your research. You go on eBay Sold and you look. You think the book is a 9.8? Look up on eBay Sold, which is one of the best free tools out there. See what 9.8s is selling for. Because you don't want to take a book, right? And just the prime example, right? Take a book like this, right? And you put, let's say, $15 into the pressing. You put another $30 into CGC, with returned at $24 now, plus whatever the return shipping is, plus shipping to CGC. So you're probably $35 into that book, right? You paid $15. So now you're $50 into the book, and the book is a 6.0 and it's only worth $40.
Why would you do that? Right.
Right. And that's what I try and explain to people all the time. And that's why subject is grading is so subjective and so important to kind of have a really good idea, because when you're getting to bigger books, that one grade bump, you'll see like, it usually starts to drop by like 50% depending on the book, each grade. So if a book is $200 on a 9.4, it goes to 9.4, 9.6, it's $400, 9.8, depending on how many in the census, because that's the big thing too. Look on the CGC census. A lot of people, I try and explain that to people. Certain books will be very valuable only because there aren't that many of them in 9.8s.
Right. Yeah, because there's not a ton of them out there in that grade. Right. Yeah, you'll see that all the time.
Amazing Spider-Man, what is it, 119? It's that Hulk cover.
Mm-hmm.
Super hard to get in a 9.8. It's one of those white whales. So in the census, the 9.8 is like, let's say $1,500, and the 9.6 is like $300.
Right.
The disparity is really big because there's very few 9.8s.
Yeah, because it's all about rarity, right? That's what drives the market in a lot of cases. It's rarity.
Is what drives everything. Yep.
Yep. So, like, let me ask this, because I've just recently started buying some Golden Age books. Like, I would, and really, and I started out very, very simply. Okay. I just wanted to get some and understand what I'm looking at as far as quality, right? Like, and what I bought was Tom Corbett's Space Cadet. And the reason I bought those books is because I love the covers. They're the painted covers.
Right.
And I dig that genre, right? Like the spaceship, that whole thing. Is there any reason to get a book cleaned and pressed that you're not going to get graded? It's just like, if I wanted to get it just for presentation purposes, is there any reason to do that?
Unless it's sentimental and you want to encapsulate it, why would you do it if it's not a monetary thing, at least in my opinion? The other thing with those golden ages that I learned this time, and you got to go back in history though, but World War II, that's pulp paper, I believe it's called. Because we were remember, we're at war. So all of our supplies are being utilized at war. You're going to see some of those Golden Age books with one staple only, because they were minimizing on the amount of staples they were using.
Right.
It's just real interesting when you go down that rabbit hole and try and start learning why things were done that way. So that gets pressed a different way, different temperatures because of the quality of the paper.
Is that one of your favorite parts? Because just in sitting here talking to you, you did a lot of research, right? You said, okay, there's these different papers. There's just different humidity. There's all these different things. Is that an attraction to you, in doing the pressing part of it? Or did you just try to educate yourself as much as you could?
It starts out as education, but I always like to match wits, and it's the puzzle. Trying to figure out what gets this done. And you'll see like guys, and there's some guys that I talk to continuously about it, but like, guys have evolved now. So now they use a ball bearing to roll out some defects on a book, and it makes a lot of sense. But who thought of that? I thought that was a great idea. You go to the store, buy a big ball bearing, use that using a tacking iron and different tools of the trade that people use.
How many presses do you have now? Like, do you have a whole room set up in your house or at a business where you just got presses sitting everywhere?
I have seven machines operating right now.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And I would say you're busy enough where you're probably pressing books every day, aren't you?
Every day I set up at least two runs a day, because the books have to cool down at a certain temperature. So depending on how much humidity is utilized on the book and everything else, that book might have to stay in a press for 24 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. So it depends. But
I find myself too, there's a couple of channels I watch, some people I've found, and I don't know, this intrigues me, and some people it bores the hell out of them, but it just kind of intrigues me. And it's these guys who are doing this true conservation on these books.
Yeah.
Like they're figuring out how to make paper. They're, putting it back in. They're, reattaching.
They're casting books.
Casting books. Yes. Thank you. Is that something that you do or have interest in?
At this point, no. I think it's just another level that I'm not ready to go down right now. If I were to do it, I would probably do it for fun.
Right. Just to play, just to experiment.
Just to play with it and figure it out.
Now that's cool. So, you were talking about your son. Is he into the pressing the books too? Like, is
No,
that what?
wants nothing to do with it.
Nothing. Yeah. No. So he's more to the reader. He's, hey, dude, I'm
Yeah,
collecting. You do this. That's work.
I got my full-time job. That's just a headache. He goes, that's you.
Yeah, that looks too much like work. I'm not messing with that. I love it. All right. So this is question 7, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit because you mentioned that you set up at a con. It was the first time last year you had set up a con. Right. Now, is that something you intend to do more going forward?
It is. Actually, now March 19th, we're going to have King Con number 2, which is going to be bigger and better. I think it's 10,000 square feet that they rented out. Last time they had like 4,500. I'm sorry. Yeah, last time they had 4,500 square feet. I think they got 10,000 square feet this time. So it's double the space. And you're going to have everybody. What enticed me is MTG Comics, the guy who runs the show, Greg. I know him through small cons and Instagram. And he was doing something where he wanted to have not your regular vendor. So if you go to a lot of these smaller shows, it's usually the same guys all the time. And it's guys that have been locked in there for a long time, and they kind of have a hold of the cons. He did something which I thought was really, really smart. He brought people from the comic community in. And so he had people like Very Gary set up there. I set up there. Streetside Anthony set up there. And he had just guys from IG and YouTube that don't normally sell up books. Ex-Illusionary was set up there. Guys that don't normally, plus some vendors that sell at all these shows, all set up together. And it was a great success. It was the same day that Big Apple Con was going. And you had to see the volume of people that came just you know what was really good about it was I got to meet a lot of people in the community and just talk comics. It didn't have to be that you bought something from me. And I tell everybody, just come on by and say hello. Guys would come, hey, I watch the channel, big fan, blah, blah, blah. And we talk about comics. And it made my day. The day went by so fast. It was fun, and it was a big success. So this year should be better. You're going to have 3 Men in the Basement will be there again. The Pressable Defects are going to be hosting it again. CBSI is going to be there this year. So it's going to be good.
Now, are you just selling books? Or are you pressing? Like, what are you doing?
No. Just selling books. Just selling books. Usually what I do, I did it. I'll open up if my lists are closed, because sometimes I have to shut it down just so I can keep up with the volume. A show like that, to help out the show and everything else, I'll open it up to like 10 people that hit me up. First 10 people that hit me up. But I'm working on that now. I'll probably announce that on my show somewhere along the line. And the first 10 people that hit me up, I'll take their orders at the show.
Cool.
And they'll get on my list.
So are you planning on doing any cons outside of King Con? Like, are you planning on maybe trying to go out like around where you live to different cons and keep selling?
That's the plan. Eventually, it's just to start expanding a little more. I know I'm going to set up in the Bronx with Streetside Anthony again. He does a yard sale, but it's a comic book heaven yard sale. And it's just, he has this whole backyard and he just sets it up. When we set up tables there, and people come from all over, and I get to see different people that I don't normally see because they're coming from a different location. Yeah. So it's pretty cool.
That's cool. Yeah, that is cool.
It's cool. Well, it's funny you saying because you're a flea market, but I'm a flea market guy. I like hunting for comics at flea markets.
Well, that actually leads me to question 8 because, when we were trying to set the interview up, right? So we were trying to set up the time because a lot of times because of my work schedule, I'll record these on Saturdays at usually 10, 11 a.m. And you were like, hey, I can do Saturday, but I need to do it later in the day because I generally go out to shops and hunt and, and do those things. And so I wanted you to talk a little bit about that. Like, is that something that you do every Saturday that you hit these, hit shops up or flea markets or things like that and look for books?
I used to, especially in warm weather, Saturday mornings, I'm out the door early and I'll try to hit 1, maybe 2 flea markets in the morning. And now with all of the small local shows, and I've kind of expanded. That's something that I took last year after COVID and when the shops opened, I started going to these small shows again, and I like them so much better than going to a big convention because it's all about comics, and it's a camaraderie there. There's a lot of guys that all just avid readers or collectors, and we just talk comics all day long, and you have a great time with it. So I was doing the local Jersey ones, the local New York ones. But now I started branching out, and I've gone to Connecticut. I've gone to Pennsylvania and done local shows there and met new people at different locations. It's a lot of fun.
No, that's cool because I like to get out and hustle around. Because for me, where I live, where my office is at, there's an LCS. That's my LCS, one of my channel sponsors. It's 5 minutes from my business where I'm at. But when I'm home, the closest LCS is an hour in each direction.
Oh, okay.
It's really spread out. So we have to pick antique shops and flea markets and things like that. Do you like doing that as well? Because now I love the flea market vibe. Yeah, I love that.
I do. You know what I really like? I'll tell you the truth. I like it when a guy just bought a storage unit and he's coming in there with a storage unit and he's just blowing stuff out. Like, this is not a boast or anything like that, but I went to a flea market and found a Tomb of Dracula 10, first blade. There were 5 guys at the table in front of me, and they're all looking at books. And I saw the corner of the cover sticking out of that pile. And they all passed them, and nobody bought them. I walked up, and I says, how much for these 5 books? And the guy goes, $3 a piece. And it was Tomb of Dracula 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. $3 a piece. Took them. Have a nice day.
That's crazy. No, and I love that. That is the true treasure hunting aspect of what makes this hobby so much fun. Because I was telling you, my uncle, we legit would go anywhere, and pick and hunt, and it's like finding treasure. It's much fun.
It's a lot of misses, more misses than hits. But when you get that diamond in the rough, it's so much fun. Submariner 1 I found there for like $3. But I tell you, the one that got away from me. I went to the flea market and I was digging in. A guy had like 10 long boxes. I'm going through the long boxes, and I pull up book, and there's a guy next to me, and he's talking to the vendor, and he's like, "Hey, I'm selling some books. You want to take a look at them?" And the guy's like, "Let me see what you got," and shows him, and he had an X-Men 101, and the vendor didn't want to buy it. So I talked to the guy, and we strike a deal. He goes, "I got some more books in my car. Let's take a walk to my car." We go to his car, and I buy the book from him, and I come back. I go back to the box where I was at, but somebody's on that. So when you're at a con, you're picking at a box, guy's right next to you. So the guy's at the box I'm at. He goes through it, and he pulls up that Superman 75th anniversary issue, and Dynamic Forces did a signing with Jerry Siegel.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And the book was signed by Jerry Siegel, and it had the certificate of authenticity on it. And the guy looks at it and doesn't know what he has. And he goes, "What is this?" "It's signed by somebody." And then he flips it around. And he goes, "Oh, it's Jerry Siegel. All right. How much?" And the guy says, $1.
No, are you kidding me? Oh my God. Yeah, no, I've got misses like that too. I mean, there's 1,000 of them out there. I said, if you hunt and pick, that kind of leads me to question 9, and then we'll finish up. Question 10 is going to be something fun, but this is something I've noticed about you, just watching your channel and familiarizing myself with you over the past year and a half since I've really kind of been into YouTube. When you're out picking, you really kind of have a distinct advantage in a sense. And I'm sure you've been able to use that to kind of work into going to the cons and having books to sell so you can fund your hobby, because you can press, you can clean, you can do those things. Are you able to, I think, and I guess what I'm trying to say is, you will find books and look at them, and somebody like, "Yeah, that's trashed. I don't want to necessarily fool with that." But you know that you can take it home and fix it, and it's going to have some value once you do that. Do you feel like that's an advantage for you when you're out looking?
It's what I use more at conventions than anything else.
Yeah.
When I go to a show, I'm looking at the book. I tell everybody, because you're going to see it. You get excited. You go to a show, you get excited. It's the ambiance, and all the books are in the walls, and there goes that book that you really like, Fantastic Four Annual 6, right? And you take it off the wall and you look at the front cover. Always ask to look at the book. If he says no, then he's not really looking to sell that book. because you don't know what's on the back of that cover, what's inside that book. Flip through the book, take a look at it, make sure the centerfold, Batman 181 needs to have that centerfold inside of it, you know? The ASM 238 needs to have the stamp, the tattoo on it. Make sure that if you know about those items, you look for those items. But then I look for defects that are pressable, and I think could possibly make me get a grade bump up. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of dealers are very good and they are accurate and they know, but sometimes you'll get that book that's that diamond in the rough that you think you could get better. And I've had success with it, you know?
Right. No, and that kind of leads me, though, to the second half of this question, which is what I wanted to know. In watching your channel and really just listening to you talk, you have, in my opinion, you have a really, really good knowledge base of what you're looking at. And I think that's important. As my uncle used to tell me all the time, he said, look, because he read constantly, right? He was always reading, and he didn't read books to read them like for entertainment. He was studying. So that when he went out and was looking and he was picking, he knew what he was looking at when somebody else might not know. He knew what he was looking at. And so in listening to you on your channel, it just seems that you have a really, really good knowledge base about the books. And like you can pull a book out of a box. Hell, I wouldn't know what it was. You're going to know. And I was wondering, like, how did that knowledge base develop? Is it, how do you study, I guess, or is it more just being out kind of picking every Saturday, going to flea markets, doing that thing, and then figuring out what you got?
It's YouTube and Instagram, and learning books. So like you said, I'll be at somewhere and I'll find a book and I'll know that that's the first appearance of so-and-so, even though that person's not on the cover. So I have what I call like a stupid Rolodex in my head of just books. And I can go through a box and I'll know this book means something. This book means something. And you kind of educate yourself. But I learned a lot of it from like watching other guys on YouTube. Because there's some knowledgeable guys on there. And you go on like Instagram and then there's even more on there. And Instagram's even better because it's pictures. So everybody's just putting up pictures of books and describing what the book is and what this means and stuff like that. And always staying on top of the trends. Because like I'm older. I could be stuck on the silver and bronze and copper age and never know anything about the modern. It just wouldn't be as much fun because then you're tied into like that one loophole there when you start reading some of the modern stuff, like one of my favorite newer guys, and not but it's like Brian Michael Bendis. Some of the stuff he's written just resonates with me.
Sure.
You know, or you got Scott Snyder and his run on Batman and that New 52 was just unbelievable. Jason Aaron's with Thor, and Donny Cates and what he did. All newer writers that were like, I would have missed this stuff if I wasn't following up on this stuff.
Well, that's because the reason I wanted to ask you that is because, like, in my collecting, like I collected when I was a kid, but I collected as much baseball cards and basketball cards and that as I did comic books. The comic books were reading for me. Like, it was entertainment. Sitting at the flea market with my uncle, and I would just grab a book and read it. And that's what I did. So it wasn't as much about collecting. My kids got to the point where Dad wasn't cool anymore. They didn't want to necessarily hang out with me. And I was looking for something to do. And so I ventured into a comic book shop. The heavens parted. The angels started singing. I knew I was back home. It was that whole thing. But it was more, again, it kind of came back to the reading aspect of it for me because I enjoy reading. But where as you develop or, become more knowledgeable as a collector, as you're into the hobby and you've got some disposable income and you're looking to invest in some things, I'm starting to try to teach myself about books, like, so that I know what you said. You're flipping through, you had a Tomb of Dracula book sitting there that 5 people passed over because they had no clue what was there, and neither did the guy selling it. So I'm trying to figure out the best way to really familiarize myself with what's out there. Like, I can memorize things pretty easily.
Yep.
So I've been going through like Key Collector, like they'll have the key books, right? So they'll have that listing. And I've just been going through, looking at the pictures, doing a memorization technique to where I can remember, okay, this is the book, this is the character, this is the cover. And so I guess what I'm getting at is, do you do things like that? I mean, and study?
Yep. And it's funny, or I'll be, yep, you probably had this happen to you. And I use different sources to look up books, but you're going through a bin and you see a book and the book clicks to you like this is something. So you do a quick scan on your phone, and that's the beauty of having a phone now.
Yeah.
You know? We used to, you remember we used to go out with sheets. I used to have a notebook, and I would have all my books written in that notebook because I wound up buying so many doubles of books that I would scratch off the numbers, you know?
Oh, no, absolutely. No. I've been through that. Did it the other day. Bought a book that I already had.
When I found that CLG app, that was a game changer for me. Because now
No, go ahead.
So now you have your whole collection at your disposal right there.
Yeah.
On the phone.
Right there on your phone. Yeah, absolutely. So if you were recommending to someone like me that is trying to kind of familiarize themselves with older books so that you're, because you don't always have time. And where I live, hell, there's not cell service half the time. Like there's a flea market I go to and there's no cell service. So you're just kind of on your own. Are there some places that you recommend going to really, is there a book, like I know there's like a history of Marvel that, is I
I've
bought.
never done that. You know what I do quite often, even though you won't have cell service, if I see something that I'm not too familiar with, I take a picture of it and I keep it in a file. And so now like you and I, so now that picture is going to stay in my head. And I'm going to think about it. And if I'm at a show or something like that, I go through my phone and I'll see the books that I'm looking for because it gives me a visual. And I'm good with visuals. So I'll have pictures of books that I'm looking for that most people aren't looking for. So like like when that new Avengers 44 or whatever, the first Skull Queen, 3 years ago I was picking that book up, but I had a picture of it in my phone, and I would go to like a shop when my son was going to college upstate. I would go to a shop up there, and the cell service was horrible, but I always had pictures in it, so I would know when I went through categories what book I was looking for. And it's just a little thing that I always use that works for me.
No, that makes sense because I'm pretty visual myself, as far as like covers will stand out in my mind. Like I said, I try to pick something definitive on the cover. It's just a memorization technique, but it's, I'll try to pick something specific on the cover so that if I see it, it will immediately jump and I'll know, okay, this is something. And I'll know, kind of know, but I like the idea of having a picture of it. You can hit your phone and, you can even put a note on those things.
I was just going to say, sometimes I write a note on it and I'll write first appearance of so-and-so or something like that. And like on Instagram, I follow specific guys that are big speculators. And if I think that spec kind of resonates with me, I'll take a picture of that speculation. And
that's cool.
That I'll tie down the line.
That's cool. I swear to God, I could do 20 questions with you. I have done 20 questions with you. I could do 40 more. So as far as, you're looking at books, you're selling, you're doing those things. How do you watch the trends? Like, because like obviously I've talked to the Pressable Defects, right? All three of those guys and love them. Great guys, had the best time with them. We'll talk about them off camera, but they might watch this, so we'll speak nicely of them here.
Of course,
of course, right? You know. But like, what do you watch trend wise? Like, and talking to them, they were like, okay, we know that Moon Knight's coming out.
Yes.
We're going to go back and read Moon Knight, and then we're going to look at all the surrounding characters, and who potentially could show up in a show. Do you use a similar technique, to try to determine?
It's basically the same thing. The best example, and like I said, I'll also collaborate with a couple of guys that I know that are into the same type of thing. When we saw the Eternals, and you saw the end credit scene, and all of a sudden. He's got the ebony blade there, and you hear Moon Knight. You hear Blade talking behind him, and my son's like, "Oh," but I'm like, "But why is it Blade? Why is Blade talking to him?" So now you go home and you start doing some research, and where is the first time that Blade ever meets Moon Knight? And it's MI13, Captain Britain, and MI13 number 5, and then you realize that Captain Britain's been a character that's been speculated on to come to the MCU possibly also. So now we have Blade in the MCU, we have Moon Knight in the MCU, and we have possibly Captain Britain in the MCU. And there's also been a lot of rumors about it being horror related, what's coming, right? In the Supernatural. That's a Supernatural team that fights against Dracula. So that's a spec, and stuff like that.
No, that's cool. Yeah, I find that interesting too. How people, because like I said, I'm just trying to learn, trying to educate myself, and trying. I'm fortunate enough to sit down and talk with people like you, and so I'm asking. I want to know, like, how can I make myself better?
I like the defects, not because they're my friends, but like especially like Matty Forge is like a guru with that stuff, and Jay's the reader. They get really deep on that stuff. They do a good job. Very Gary and those guys, they all do real good work on that. It's I just don't like it when it's clickbaity and guys are just putting it out there just to put it out there. If you can show me why you thought this process and what your thought process is through that, and explain to me why you think that this is going to be, and that allows me to make my own decision, I like that.
All right, so question 10, and we'll have a little fun with this one. So I was reading this book the other day, and I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on it. And it was the biography of Adlai Stevenson. It's the book.
Yeah.
No, that was, I swear, that is the funniest thing I've ever seen. So,
how bad was that?
Oh man, it was so bad. I mean, like, it really was. Like, when you picked that up and you saw it, I swear. What was this? What was it you said? This is a biography of trash.
Trash, right?
This is the biography of trash. So, I've seen you do a few mystery boxes and some other things. Do you still do that kind of thing, or have you kind of ventured away from it?
No, I'm probably gonna do another one. I try not to do them often, because I try and make sure that the way I do my mystery boxes is I want to give you, let's say I do a $500 mystery box. I want to make sure that box has at least $575 to $600 worth of quality books in there. I try not to put filler books inside those boxes. And so far I haven't gotten a complaint. It works for me. And then I always put a key. And when I put a key, I try and make that key worth it. So like the grand prize, it'll always be something that's, if it's a $500 box, you're going to get probably an $800 book in there,
Yeah.
And I think that way you can't go wrong. Everybody is happy. But when you try and over maximize on your books, I'm willing, if I pay cheap, to give it to you for a little less in that deal. Everybody's happy. I still make my money back. You get a book that, you're going to get more than, you're going to get more than your value back,
Yeah, no, that was one of the greatest things I've ever seen, though. Like I said, I've been saving that, and I thought I have to ask him because
there's a clip on that now.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I know. It's one of the greatest things ever, man. I said it's so much fun, and you do a great job on your channel. I mean, I think your content's interesting, and it's just you do a great job, and you have a good presence about you too when you're talking. Your channel is one of those that as soon as I heard your name, I was like, okay, well, who is this guy? I found your channel, and then I started watching it, and I was like, well, I like this cat. He's knowledgeable. You remind me of my uncle, to be honest with you. I mean, like, you do. He is like you. Like I always tell people, he was like Mike Wolf on American Pickers. If you know who Mike Wolf is, that was my uncle.
Yeah. I was addicted to that show.
Yeah, so that was my uncle.
It's funny, I still on YouTube. I'll watch flea market shows.
Yeah, they're good. I watch them all the time.
I watch them all the time. I watch Harry Tornado. That guy is great. Just watching guys like that pick and the way they make it's kind of interesting to me.
Well, and when they go to yard sales, like I like watching that. People go to yard sales and pick crazy stuff up. Dude, I spent probably 15 years of my life doing that with my uncle, just going wherever. There'd be like it's called the 23. It's one of the main highways where I live, and there's a yard sale, the 23 yard sale, and it will go for 150 miles all the way up in Ohio. And it'll go on for a week. And my uncle would just take off work at the time, or if he wasn't working, if he was laid off from the coal mines, he would just take off and drive and just start picking. It was so much fun just digging through junk. I don't know what's fun about that, but it is.
It is. I get it. It's that diamond in the rough, finding that treasure.
It's modern day treasure hunting, man.
And
So
treasure
it's
hunting.
just,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, it's just, like pirates,
Yeah. There's
but
buried
no,
treasure in there somewhere.
yes, sir. No, it's fun. Well, man, that's 10 questions. And I mean, like, I legit could talk to you for another 2 hours, but I tried to hold this to an hour. But I've had an absolute ball. That was incredibly interesting.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate that. This was fun.
Yeah, man, this was a blast. I had a great time. Talk to people, or just kind of let people know, if they're looking to have their books pressed, how they can find you and how they can reach out to you.
All right, so you'll see me on IG a lot. I have a pressing page on IG. It's Express CBP, and just hit me up there, and I could send you prices and my wait times and everything else like that. Same thing as an email. It's Express XPRESSCBP@yahoo.com. If you send me an email, I'll respond to your emails and get that stuff to you. Look forward to March 19th for King Con 2. That's going to be a good time. Like I said before, just stop in and say hello. You will not. Guys came there just to talk and just talk comics, and that's all it was wall to wall guys and girls talking comics. And sorry to cut you, but I had a great experience there. I met a man there, and I was talking to him about comics, and he had his daughter, and we were just talking, and she was reading. So I always like to learn people's perspective. So when I see little kids, I'll ask them, hey, what's your favorite superhero? What do you like to do? And if I see a young lady or something like that, what do you like to read? Because it's a different version of something different from what I'm reading, but I like to be interested. And she was reading a bunch of different things, but she was a big Harry Potter fan. And I was like, wow, really? And I had a copy. I bought it one time. It's the first appearance of Harry Potter in comics, and it has nothing to do with like a comic book. It's like some one-day print. And I gave her a copy, and she got emotional, and she was really happy with it. And you know what? It made my day, because you made a connection with somebody.
Oh, that's awesome.
Stuff like that, and that happened at King Con. It was fun.
That's great, man. So I got, I was, like I said, I interviewed the Defects, and talking to those guys, they have invited me to Terrificon. Is that one that you go to?
Yes. Brother, you need to come to Terrificon.
Well, there's a pretty good chance you're going to meet me there.
Yeah, I'll be there. I'm actually going for 2 nights this time. Because last year I went, it was the first time I had gone to Terrificon. I had never been to Terrificon before, and I had an absolute blast. There were so many guys from the community, and the thing with it all is, after the con is done, everybody goes out to dinner together. Everybody hangs out. You hang out. You socialize even a little more at nighttime. Have a few adult beverages, and everybody just hangs out and has a good old time. Back to the con the next day. It was great, and it's a fantastic show. Fantastic.
Well, that's what they were telling me. It's just fun because it's at that casino, I guess.
Yeah.
And you can go gamble. You can go out and have dinner. You can, partake in adult beverages. There's just anything you want to do, you can, and you get to hang out and talk about comic books all day. I don't know how it could get any better than that.
You had to see it, man. It was my group was like me, the Butcher, Matt Forge, Matty Forge, Emerald Knight. There were just so many guys from the community. We run into ERod212 and those guys from 3 Men in the Basement, and you're walking by, you run into another guy that's just hanging out, and everybody it was great.
No, man, that's a lot of fun. So, no, I look forward to meeting you there. I've pretty much committed to those guys that I will come.
All right, that's great.
Yeah, I think DJ Lynx is going to come down too and meet me there. He's one of my buddies that I've made.
DJ Lynx, DJ Lynx is a good man. He's got a great channel. He just hit 2,000 subs. I just saw.
So, he did. He just hit his 2K.
He won one of my mystery boxes. He won the grand prize.
Oh, cool. Yeah, no, he and I, kind of came on board at the same time, and he's one of my, like you were talking about, you made these friends in the community via YouTube, and he's one of the guys that I've made friends with and I've become pretty tight with. And so I think we all went to C2E2 and met up, this year back in December, back in December, and all got to actually meet each other in person and kind of hung out like you were talking about at Terrificon. Yeah. And it's a lot of fun. And, I never dreamed, I consider myself an old man these days. Yeah. And the fact that I've made meaningful relationships through YouTube blows my mind.
So again, and I don't want to carry on. I used to watch YouTube videos and I would be like, that guy's wrong. And I would be critiquing it. And my younger guy was like, and he's the technology guy. He's like, why don't you make videos? You say you know more than these people. You do. make videos. And I was like, and he kind of guided me through it. And it's been life-changing. It has.
Yeah. Well, the whole reason I started.
Guys I talk to on a regular basis that became real friends, because you know what it is? You don't only have work interests with them. You have hobby interests with them and life interests and stuff like that. It's actually kindred souls, you know?
Yes, it's kindred spirits, 100%. I said, and that's why I started doing it and the reason I did it was because I was talking to my kids. We were having breakfast one day, and I'm self-employed, self-made businessman. I've, worked my guts out for years. And I've tried to instill in my kids that you can literally do anything that you want to do. You got to be willing to work for it.
Yep. And
you got to have the guts to try it. And they were talking about YouTube, and they would like to make a video. And I was like, well, do it. You're old enough now. Do it if you want to. Show off the clothes that you buy, the makeup, whatever it is that you want to do. Just do it. And they were like, no, I couldn't do that. We can't do that. I was like, you can, and I will show you can. I'll do it. And I'll get on there and talk about comic books. And, a year and a half later, here we are. And, and it's been life-changing for me. I say it all the time. There was something.
Journey, right?
What's that?
It's a journey.
It's a journey.
It's a journey.
And it's been one of the most meaningful journeys for me. And I don't mean to be sappy and carry on, but it's just, and I say this a lot, like there was something missing in my life.
Right.
And I found it here.
Yep.
And it means so much to me. I would,
my life's. Once you embrace it, it's a different, like I said, I have friendships with guys. You don't talk to guys for 3 or 4 days, and the guys are calling you to make sure and check up on you, say, hey, how you doing? Everything's good.
Yep.
So it's not just comic books, it's friends.
It's friends. It's unbelievable. Like I said, I was one of those guys, like I'm older, so I have 1 foot in the old way and 1 foot in the technology, right? The new way. And I never dreamed I could make friends virtually online, doing interviews and, and things like that. And it is, but I have, and I 100% love it, because there's not a whole lot of people around. There's some people at the LCS that I talk to, right, that are into comic books and things like that. But in my everyday life, nobody cares, about comic books. And it's just cool to be able to talk about that stuff.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, dude, I think that's a great place to end this. Go check my boy ERod out. Like, this has been a phenomenal interview. And I'm not joking. His channel is excellent. Go watch his channel. You may see him pop up on the Defects channel. You'll hear him mentioned on Barry Gary quite a bit. The man's a staple in this community. Go check him out. And if you need your books pressed, hit him up. I'll link all that stuff down in the description below so you know where to find him. ERod, what an amazing interview, man. I absolutely love that.
I had a blast, Jimmy. Thank you. This was nothing but fun. I appreciate it.
All right, guys, that's it. This has been 10 Questions.